This meeting of the Grafton Planning Board is being conducted entirely remotely pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, impose strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place. I will call the roll of board members and we'll identify the staff as we go here to ensure that we can hear you. Please be sure to be unmuted when you respond. Justin.
Here.
Linda.
Here.
Do you hear her okay? Yes. Because she's using my microphone. Prabhu.
Here.
And Vikram.
Yep, present.
Okay. And me. I take it people are hearing me. Please note that this meeting is being recorded as well as being broadcast live on the Grafton Community Television Government Channel. Participation by the public for the public comment item and the public hearings will be via the Zoom Q&A feature. When using Q&A to ask a question or make a comment, please include your name and address, and your comment or question will be read and responded to at an appropriate point in the proceedings. Every vote will be taken by roll call. Okay. Something more I wanted to do. Oh, well, all right, staff. Let's, Chris.
Present.
And Natalie.
Present.
Okay. I guess we'll identify and figure out whether we can hear everybody else as we get to them. Okay, that brings me to public input. If there's anybody here who wants to speak to something for the board that's not on our agenda, now would be the time to let us know. I see James. The outline popped up on James, but he's muted. So I guess I don't know what that means. Okay, apparently there's no public input. We'll move on to action items. 2A, determination of minor modifications 62 Upton Street. Longs. Maybe you want to start.
Yeah, so the applicant is here. I'm going to do a quick screen share of the application materials. So this is similar to the other restaurant, 62 Upton Street, which is Wong's Chinese Restaurant. And similar to the other hearings that have been before you, they're looking for a temporary outside seating in order to meet the guidelines of the governor's orders for social distancing and allowing that outside seating for restaurant use. And it is temporary and would be, if the board felt amenable, would be subject to the same conditions as the others, expiring in November, and still requiring health department approvals as well as police department coordination in terms of any kind of liquor sales associated with that. So
there would also be, I hope, again, a limitation that the number of seats that are available still fits with the available parking at this point, whether seating is indoors or outdoors. And the one thing that I didn't get when I looked at this paperwork was actually how many seats we're going to have between any indoors and any outdoors.
Yeah, so I don't know if the applicant wants to speak to that, but again, that condition that we've been using, it just says that the indoor and outdoor seating for the restaurant for the temporary permit, if approved, would be required. It could not exceed the original capacity and takes into account any of the parking that was reduced as part of the outdoor seating. In this case, it's about 7 spaces that they are using for the outdoor seating.
Was my understanding reading the application that all patron seating was outdoors, that indoors was to be used for restrooms and takeout for food preparation.
That is correct.
I counted 13 tables outdoors with 6 per table for a total maximum of 78 customers eating outdoors. And the parking requirements for that would be 26 parking spaces for customers, plus additional parking for employees. And you do have, according to the map, 33 total parking spaces available.
That is correct.
Yes, we can hear you.
So yes, that is correct. So we do have 33 parking spots available still. We are not doing indoor dining, so we only do outdoor seating. So for each tables, there's a limit of 6 people, but 6 people maximum. So that's how much we have for our seatings and parking. Yeah.
So it appears based on the statements made in the application and the diagrams and the calculations that the parking is sufficient to accommodate the outdoor seating. As far as I can tell anyway.
Is there anyone else here who wants to speak to this? Let us know through the tools available. Anybody on the board have any more questions?
I thought the whole picture was very, very clear. By far, the most clear depiction of where do we have the tent and how many parking spots. It was very clear.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going to basically just say the same thing, that this was the best we've had for these requests so far, and I think that's a good sign.
Thank you. We just want to also to put it out there that the tables are actually more than 7 feet apart. That gives the tables with 6 people parties to have enough space between the other 6 people parties. So the tables, at least 7 feet. They're at least 7 feet apart. And we don't add additional tables, and we make sure to keep all the social distancing. Everybody wear masks when leaving. Sanitizers are used.
Is there anything else? If not, is there a motion?
I move that the board approve this minor modification with the conditions that have become customary for these in this era.
And as we have
Second.
discussed tonight, and as we have discussed tonight,
We've discussed tonight.
Yes.
there's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. David,
Aye.
Justin,
Aye.
Linda.
Aye.
Prabhu,
Aye.
I vote aye. Motion carries. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on.
Let's just stay for
You can, Melissa, you can mute. There you go. All right. Item B, approval of minor modification and endorsement of final plan set 44 Estabrook Avenue and 43 Estabrook Avenue. Chris.
Yes, so this is, again, we're holding this one on the docket. So this was looking for endorsement of the final plan set for 44 and 43 Estabrook. Let's see, I'm just gonna pull those up in a second. I believe we have the applicants here as well.
Hello. Chris, I'm happy to follow your lead here. If you want, I can give an introduction on the narrative and we can take things from there.
Yep, I think that would be
Okay,
good.
great. Hi, so
Hey,
my name
Drew,
is,
just real quick, I want to make sure that you all can hear me. This is Josh Farkas speaking.
Yep, we can.
All right, thank you.
so thank you everyone for holding us on the agenda tonight. My name is Drew Pearson. I'm with Blue Wave Solar, representing the applicant, BWC Lake Ripple LLC. And yeah, as Josh stated, I'm here tonight with Borrego Solar, the EPC that will be building the project, along with James Trujillo from the prospective owner, AES. So to that end, oh, and I'm also here with Ian Ward as well from our team, who's been advising on the farm plan for the project and who will be working alongside the landowner on the agricultural operation. So tonight, the intent was to discuss major changes from the permitted set of plans. And so as you see here on the screen, we've got a narrative on two major items. The first of which regards the method for site establishment. The second of which regards the fencing. So on the first item, we are proposing to amend what was a wildlife seed mix as the final, cover for parts of the site, and substituting it with a solution that we believe to be more compatible with the agricultural intent of this site, with a solution that has widespread adoption in agriculture, and that is kind of couched within best management practices by the NRCS. So what we're proposing is a mixture of winter rye and straw applied in all areas of the site where grubbing or grading would occur, or where there is an existing exposed field. So if you recall, this site it's spread across two sites technically. One north of Estabrook Avenue on a 2-acre plot at 43 Estabrook, and then the other at 44 Estabrook, which is about a 11.5-acre plot. The plot to the south has an existing field over approximately 6 to 7 acres, and then there will be grubbing and minor vegetative work done, that will be done. And so to that end, we're proposing to apply it at the prescribed rate, which my colleague Ian can discuss more deeply. He's an NRCS certified farm planner, specializes in conservation practices. And I mean, the general intent is that we would apply it twice, once, during, installation, presumably following racking, and then with a follow-up layer once complete. But I'll pause it there and let Ian kind of further describe. Ian, if you wouldn't mind, just some of the context behind, when it will be planted, how it, will be, regarded as it might relate to NRCS. And then if you wanted to prompt Josh on any element, or JT on any element of construction, we can go from there.
Sure. Thanks, Drew. Ian Ward, New England Consulting Services. And the general idea here is, optimally you plant in September, right? Just like with any grass cover. The nature of the project and when it's going to start and finish, it doesn't allow for the permanent pasture to be planted. It won't germinate. So the concept here is we want to protect the soil We want to reduce compaction in the first place, protect the soil from eroding offsite. So in putting a cover crop down, essentially of the winter wheat, a winter rye rather, at the 120 pounds to the acre broadcast distribution. If we do that in that time frame, knowing that we will lose some of that seed, at least some of it will germinate in the September timeframe. Construction will happen throughout the fall, and then next spring, we would look at when the construction is complete, crimping that or tilling that in as a green manure, and then applying the permanent pasture mix at that point in time. So in coordination with Borrego, who will be doing the construction, we'll be taking drilling to avoid or minimize compaction in the solar field second. And the solar field has to go in, yes, but we're looking for the long-term impacts to be minimized from the construction and hit the ground running when seasonally next year. So we're working closely with JT and with Borrego and Josh, and maybe Josh, you can kick off some of the things that we're going to be doing during construction and then shortly thereafter.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Josh Farkas with Borrego Solar. I'm one of our project managers and account managers. I work closely with Blue Wave. This is our fourth project. We're working together, going under construction over the last couple of months, and then also represent the owner, AES Distributed Energy, who's a consistent partner of ours for building out projects across Massachusetts. So one of the unique features of the site from the previously approved plans is that, especially for the southern system, you've got an access road that goes around a good portion of the site. So we'll be breaking down the site into sort of different sections or quadrants, if you will, so that access comes off of the road that goes around the perimeter of the site and limits the amount of compaction, bringing vehicles from, say, as you can see on your screen, from the northwest point of the site. You'd sort of come from anywhere to the left of that dotted black line. And then conversely, if you were working the eastern end of the site, the equipment would exit the array, get onto the access road, go around the system, and then enter it that way. So that's just an example of one of the construction practices we've been talking about. This is a very unique site, given the dual use nature. It's a new piece to the Massachusetts SMART program. So just extra measures like that one that I just mentioned are some of the things we've been focusing on. And then just a little bit of background on Borrego. We're one of the largest engineering, procurement, and construction firms in the state and in the Northeast. So we've got a lot of experience working with Massachusetts AHJs. I think we've built a rooftop project in Grafton before, but we've not had the opportunity to build a ground mount before. So we look forward to having our in-house project management team work closely with planning board and conservation to just follow all the requirements of the permits. Yours are very similar to what we see in other towns as well. There's some site-specific ones as well, but I just, high level, we're excited to build the project and looking forward to working with everybody.
So on that note, are there any questions that we can answer on this specific item before we go on to the second?
I had a question. So is the basic change, if I read this correctly, one is replacing the wildlife seed with winter rye and straw, and the other one is fencing. That's the scope of this proposal request?
Correct.
Right? Okay. Thank you.
Anything else? Let's go on.
Okay. And then the second item, thank you, was proposed change of the fencing from chain link to a wire mesh fence that is more typical in agricultural communities, what you might commonly see on a farm. So we are proposing a fencing solution that will have wooden posts spaced on average 16 feet apart with an 8-foot high wire mesh. And kind of going from there, we feel like this is a definite upgrade compared to some of the chain links that you see on a lot of solar projects, and we're happy to talk about the fencing at any length. But this is the other major change. We provided some pictures there in the narrative, and the proposed subcontractor is local here out of Rehoboth, and they have a good track record of installing farm fencing throughout New England.
You feel that it's adequately secure?
Yeah, we do. The fencing will go down all the way to the ground, to keep animals both in and out, being that it's a grazing operation. I would probably, I'd liken that if someone is going to go to the lengths to either cut or disrupt this fencing, to get into the site, that would effectively be no different or, pretty similar to what someone might do with a standard chain link. But Ian, I don't know if, you're a lot more familiar with this type of fencing. If you have any other thoughts here as you weigh in.
Sure, I could elaborate, but I guess I would pass that to Brandon, who's on the line, who's actually the person that would be installing the fence and could speak just a minute on what it is and how strong it is.
Hello?
Yes.
Yeah, so on the, where you touched on the security on the fence, it's fairly small openings on the bottom that would be tough to climb or get access to the solar array.
And it's specifically, this fence is NRCS standard fence, so it's specifically designed to withstand impact, to not just be able to push out. It's specifically designed that it can be taut. It's woven wire, so it can be pulled very tightly. The height of 8 feet is both to keep the deer out. That's the primary purpose of dual function: keep deer out and the livestock in.
Yeah, I when you say wire, I think of chicken wire, which doesn't strike me as quite enough. But this is another. I'm not sure whether I'm familiar with this fence, but okay.
So this is quite a bit heavier gauge wire than chicken wire. It's 12.5 gauge wire, which is quite thick. It's also made with high carbon steel, which also adds to the strength of the wire.
Okay. Does anybody else? Is there anything more you need to present? Does anybody have any questions?
The only other comment that I had regarded actually one item, or one note rather, that I recognized I did not include in the narrative, but just to disclose to the board that in the interest of keeping our permit active past its expiration date at the end of this month, we will be submitting a minor modification by the 19th in order to proceed just like we did last year, to extend or to petition the board to extend the permit, just so that we've got adequate time to complete the project. But we, submitted drawings for the building permit and look forward to beginning this project very shortly.
Okay. Chris?
Can I? This is Leslie Wilson from HST Group. I know I'm not part of this project. I've worked on many solar farm projects in the past, and in the past, we've always left a 6-inch gap underneath the fencing to allow turtles to be able to migrate underneath the fencing. That's just a concern that I'm thinking of.
So to talk about that specifically, just as a point of information, So that would be a conventional solar array. That would be typical. This specifically is for agriculture.
Okay.
It's designed for that. There will be the spacing on these is 3 inches by 6 inches on the bottom.
Okay. Okay.
So things can still crawl through them, but
Okay.
it's designed so that you don't want coyotes or
Correct.
beneath it.
Yes, I understand. I didn't know that part of it, but thank you for explaining that. Thank you.
Okay, do we have anything else? Chris, what do we need to do here?
So this is a request for determination of minor modification. As noted, the request for a full modification pertaining to the extension of the deadline will come at a later date. But this right now is just for determination of minor modification. If the board, essentially determining if the board finds that the change in fence type and seed mixture is a substantial change or not.
Okay, so we have to decide if it's a minor, and if it is a minor, then we have to approve it. Do we?
Yeah, so it is ultimately the board's prerogative of whether or not that is substantial enough to require a new public hearing. But if it's not substantial enough, it can be handled as a determination of minor modification.
Right, but we might want a motion that also then approves.
I would be delighted to make the motion. In fact, I so do make the motion. Let's make it complicated.
And Wood seconds.
Board find that this is a minor modification and that the board approved the minor modification.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none.
Aye.
David? Justin?
Aye.
Linda?
Aye.
Prabhu?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Motion carries. And that covers, there were actually two
Yes.
things, two sites. And we've covered everything we need to cover, right, Chris?
And just to be clear, this was a minor modification to 2 special permits. The motion included both of them.
Right.
Even though I didn't say so explicitly.
That's what I understood. Okay, so it carries. So got that. It is now 7:30, so it's time for our public hearings. We'll probably, I suppose we'll do this when we get to them, but people may want to know, I've been informed this afternoon that item C, the North Street subdivision, has asked to withdraw without prejudice. Is that correct, Chris?
That may have come after. Did that come later in the day today? I didn't see that.
It's on the website.
That is correct. From Natalia emailed us saying that it came later in the day and that it is they requested to withdraw.
It's submitted. It's in the exhibits.
And also, there's a request to continue on item F, the 274 Providence Road, Providence Street Village. So if there's anybody waiting on those, you don't have to watch the rest of this to find that out. Okay. I think we can move on to 6A, request for special permit SP 2020/7 SPA and site plan approval at 20 Milford Road. Chris.
Yep, so this is the Landscape Depot, the landscaping business that's going in at 20 Milford Road. At the board's last hearing, we continued to get the final Graves engineering peer review, which we did receive today. And I was also directed to draft a decision, and I did do that. So I can pull that up and we can go through those decision items if the board would like. I believe the applicant and engineer are also available to discuss if needed. So.
Okay.
Yeah, this is John Grenier. I am the engineer for the applicant. And just kind of more detail, what a week and a half ago, and we went out and did some soil testing to confirm the soils in the area we were going to be placing some of the detention basin. The material was consistent with what we had anticipated, and also the depth of groundwater was actually a little bit deeper than what we had anticipated. So we didn't have any issues with the offset to groundwater for our detention basin. We did add for some additional treatment of stormwater. We did add an additional forebay into the basin. Actually, I was on the phone with Jeff Walsh this afternoon, right after he prepared his comment letter. And we were on the same page. He's fine with everything. The only thing that he asked that we do modify a little bit is we're showing a little hatching pattern where the flared end is for the overflow spillway to the detention basin, and just make sure that we rotate a little bit so that if they place the stone exactly where we showed it, it may trickle out outside of the line of where we showed the hatching for the stone. So it's more of a drafting exercise to take about 5 minutes. But beyond that, I believe that we addressed all of his comments and concerns, and we should be fine in terms of engineering. And I just wanted to also let the board know that he did also comment that because they're going to have to install floor drains in the garage area, because they will be parking vehicles in there, they will need a gas and oil separator to be installed. And that is part of the permitting with through the building department with the plumbing department. So we showed a gas and oil separator on the plan view, but we would be providing as part of the permit with the plumbing department a detail for that structure as well. So I just wanted to kind of close the loop on that. But other than that, unless my client has anything further to add, I think we're in pretty good shape on this project.
Anybody have any questions? Chris, you were talking about going through the report. Is there anything very much that we need to hit on?
Yeah, so I can pull up the draft decision, but it's pretty standard from essentially the previous approval that was for this site, even though the business type has changed. I did note that we included a condition on the landscaping that the board had discussed previously. And then as John indicated, I would request that in addition to my decision that we just add conditions for that comment 6 in regards to the contouring and the oil separator detail, which I think could be handled as a comment fairly easily. But I'll pull those up in a second. 2 screens is not enough.
Are there questions? So we need to close the hearing and then consider the decision. Correct?
Mr. Chair, I move that we close the public hearing.
Second.
Moved and seconded to close the hearing. Any discussion? Hearing none. David,
Aye.
Dustin,
Aye.
Linda,
Aye.
Prabhu,
Aye.
and I vote aye. Motion carries to close. Draft decision. Comments, questions, typos, anything?
So I did leave a placeholder for the Graves Engineering, which I'll add to the exhibits.
So that was received before the hearing was closed.
Yep.
And it's my understanding from the discussion that we can expect a revised plan with some very minor changes to it. And because of the intent is pretty clear, I assume that we would probably cover that in a
Well,
condition.
we have a draft decision. Do we have that in there? Or do we need to add it?
So that would be one of my suggestions to add is the condition that would address the final plans, indicating the construction detail and the contours noted in Graves
so.
Engineering.
Are there any other modifications or additions?
I'll move that we approve this draft decision favorably with the modifications I discussed already and any further to be discussed in discussion.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. Discussion. Seeing none. David,
Aye.
Dustin,
Aye.
Linda,
Aye.
Prabhu,
Aye.
I vote aye. Motion carries.
Mr. Chair, before we move on to the our chat, Drew Pearson from Blue Wave Solar did express that he wants to clarify if our decision to approve the minor modifications satisfies the requirement to have planning board endorse the plans. And if it's possible to make that explicit, so it's on the record, it would be greatly appreciated.
Chris,
I don't think you heard you.
All right. Yeah, so the condition for the endorsement of the plans, we can go back to that, but that was one of the conditions of the decision. So my understanding is the modification would have, but
Do we need a, or should we have a formal vote to have the plans endorsed for the Estabrook?
yeah, I think that would be just to be explicitly clear. If there was, if they weren't clear, then I think it's good to make it clear on the record. But
is that any different than any other time? I mean, endorsement of plans is just always a part of the process. I'm not quite sure how we're going to get plans endorsed, but with
correct. So I believe how we've done it, there was one other plan endorsement that we've done remotely, if you will, and similar to the A&R plans, board authorized the town planner to sign said plans in their stead, the ones that were provided.
Maybe Justin wants to make a motion to do that then.
I'll move that we authorize the town planner to sign the 43 and 44 Estabrook solar plans on behalf of the board.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? David,
Aye.
Dustin,
Aye.
Linda,
Aye.
Prabo,
Aye.
I vote aye. Motion carries.
Thank you, everyone. Greatly appreciated.
Moving on. Yeah, 141. Okay. Item B. Request for modification of site plan approval SPA 2017-1.1 at 126 Worcester Street. Yes.
Yep. So again, I believe the applicant and the engineer are available. So similarly, I was directed to draft a decision for the board's consideration tonight. I believe the public hearing is still open. Again, we were looking to capture some of the outstanding comments that were needed. I can pull up the site plans. Just want to make sure I get the right ones. But this is the O'Malley Chiropractic. They're expanding the parking in order to accommodate some of the Mass DOT vehicles that come into the sites.
So what in particular were we waiting on to with leaving the hearing open for this one? Do you recall?
I believe, I'm trying to remember. I believe there was Graves' comments.
They had come in on the 27th. Or they did come in.
This is Chris McClure. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, yes.
Great. Yes. So the Graves comments did come in on July 27th, and if you review Graves' letter, it does. They do state that all of their comments, and there was no further comment necessary after our response on our July 24th response.
Yeah, I don't see anything open on the Graves report. Does anyone else? Design engineer responded that a condition in the decision would be agreeable on the item 9 soil testing.
Yeah, so I believe the soil testing, we did leave the public hearing open and the possibility that the soil testing could be done in the meantime, but we could also do that as a condition, which I believe is the draft decision.
Okay. Is there anything that we need to talk about? Let's see, this hearing is open, right?
The hearing is still open.
Still open.
Is there anything more that we need to do with the hearing open?
I think if we're not waiting for any more information and we have a draft decision, there's no reason to keep the hearing open. So unless I hear something that says we need to hold the hearing open, I'm about to make a motion that we close the public hearing. Going once, going twice.
Does someone want to second that motion?
Yes.
I move that this.
Sorry. There was, I think we were waiting on the DEP file number.
That's right.
And I believe I did get an email about that today.
Yes, we have not received that DEP file number as of yet.
Okay, if it's not already in the draft decision, can we cover that base in the draft decision?
I don't know that we need to know the DEP file number in order to issue our decision. I mean, it'd be nice if everything was nicely wrapped up with Concom, but
Okay,
unless we're aware of a Concom issue that might require us to take further action, I'd say that we can put that off.
well, put it off.
Right. I mean, but I'd say we can issue a decision without knowing the DEP file number.
I think I just had a motion and second to close. Did I?
Yes.
I did attempt to make that motion.
Yeah, no, I thought maybe you did. Anyway, is the motion made?
Yes.
Yes, and it was seconded, wasn't it?
Yes.
All righty. Any discussion on closing the hearing? If not, David,
Aye.
Dustin,
Aye.
Linda,
Aye.
Prabhu,
Aye.
and I vote aye. Motion carries. Hearing is closed. Do we have any discussion on the draft decision?
Mr. Chair, I just noticed in chat from Natalia that there's a point of order I should call out, that the agenda does not list approval of our draft decision for this property or even the 20 Milford Road we just voted on for the approval of the decision, but it does list this
I don't think
the public hearing.
it was in the last meeting that we had a draft decision drawn.
We did make it fairly clear at the previous meeting that we held the hearing open with the expectation of having a draft decision available to vote on. Now, the technical question is, if the agenda did not explicitly list voting on a decision, is that an issue for us?
That's the point I believe Natalia is asking, and I'm not sure the answer.
In this case, I don't think so. Well, the question is whether the world was adequately warned about what might happen at this meeting. And I think.
So in terms of being on the agenda, I guess, is it normally changed on the agenda that it's going for a vote of a draft decision? Or is it just covered under the regular?
Usually it's two different, it used to be that normally we'd close the hearing, vote to have a decision drafted, and then when it showed up on the next time, we'd have a draft decision to consider. When we're doing it this way, it doesn't, I don't think we've been particularly posting that we were going to vote on it. And
it's not.
I'll say for at least the last year and change when I've been on, I've seen it, the decision listed in our action items as well as the public hearing listed as a separate item. I don't know if that's a requirement by perchance. I just wanted to help share.
I tell you what, we could go ahead with this the way it is, and if as long as no one complains, everything is all right. If the applicants would rather wait, then we can. Because there might be some degree of exposure on a complaint, on an appeal. I really wonder if there is going to be one.
This is certainly not the first time that we have closed a hearing and immediately voted on a decision. How we have, whether we have consistently represented that on our agenda.
Any thoughts, Chris?
Yes, I do not believe that there's a specific procedural requirement that it be listed on the agenda under MGL 40A or the zoning bylaw. So I do believe the board does have the authority to move forward. I guess it is just a point of normal procedure that this is it would be deviating from that.
Yeah,
But I don't believe there's any procedure, like official procedural.
I don't think it's something that would come up with 40A or our zoning bylaw, but the open meeting law is the place that the question would arise. And as I said before, I think it's a question of whether interested parties were adequately warned about the hearing. And I don't see it as a problem here.
Yeah,
Under, like, if you look at D, I'm just pointing it out, if you look at item D, that is how we usually listed it if we were including it. But that's just prior practice.
yeah, it's probably a good idea to make that explicit on the agenda. And if anything, the lack of doing so for these two items is probably nothing more than a minor oversight. I think, as Bob said, it's really no harm unless somebody decides to appeal or challenge the draft decision on the basis that it was not properly noticed in the agenda. In both these cases, one might suspect that that's unlikely. I guess I would give the applicant, if the applicant wants to make sure every I is dotted and every T is crossed, the applicant could request that the board act on the decision at the next available opportunity for it to be posted on the agenda.
Our preference is just to move it along tonight.
Without objection, let's just go ahead.
Okay.
See, Mr. Hey, wait a minute.
Wait a minute, what?
I said, I don't see Mr. O'Malley jumping up and down saying, hey, hold on, I want to make this. He's done exactly right.
Fine, but moving forward.
You might actually want to get the work done at some point.
Sometime.
Okay. Did we have a motion yet? I think we had a motion.
Yeah, I would note that the decision as drafted does not seem to cover the soil testing as a condition or anything else that might have been pending.
So I believe the two kind of unique on this site was from the Graves comments was the soil testing, and then whether or not the vegetation, the existing vegetation met the buffering requirements to the board's purview, or if they wanted to require additional landscaping and plantings.
So do we want, how do we want those addressed in the decision?
So again, I believe that those could be handled as conditions. I would just ask that in the motion, if approved, that it's explicit that the either the landscaping should be required or is as a finding not is sufficient for the board's satisfaction.
I'll recommend and just say it out loud that I think it's sufficient as is in the findings. Unless someone objects to that statement on my end.
I would not object to that.
All right. So, again, do we have our motion?
I'll formally move that we approve this decision with the condition of the soil testing as discussed and the finding addition as discussed.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. David?
Aye.
Justin?
Aye.
Linda?
Aye.
Prebo?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Motion carries. Thank you. We're done with that one. Okay, we can move on to item C, which is the special permit 2019-12 and preliminary plan approval at 124 North R North Street and a bunch of other addresses. I see in the very recently received materials a request from Scott Goddard at Circulus Assets. I am requesting to withdraw the application for a time without prejudice, with an understanding that we will be, I guess, refiling upon receipt of the Mass Highway easement as per the request of the board. We understand that upon refiling, any new filing fee would be waived. Thank you. Discussion?
I know
No, go.
the board in the past has generally not been as amenable to waiving the fee ahead of the refiling, but at least in this particular case, I'd make the motion unless happily withdraw this to my motion, but we accept the request to withdraw without prejudice and waive the 21, excuse me, this current fiscal
Are
year.
we in fiscal? It's hard to keep track of what fiscal year.
Fiscal 21.
We are in 21. Okay. So within,
The expectation is if filed after that, then we would meet as a board to approve or deny a request to waive the fee.
You're not closing the door on a fee waiver, no matter when it's refiled.
Exactly.
You're just saying that you're proposing that the board decide no later than June 30th.
Correct.
it's okay with me, although I might have made it election day.
That has, there's been something
I second that.
Happen next year. Who knows?
We could also simply defer the question of waiving the fee until such time as it is refiled.
Well, it's a
I
condition.
don't mind doing it the way Justin has proposed.
It's his request is predicated on a fee waiver.
Yeah, I figured out my thought on my motion in particular was that the request, the applicant is saying they expect us to waive the fee, and I'd rather not get into the gray area of approving a withdrawal, but they're not okay with it without the fee waiver. So that's why my motion was as I.
Did I get a second before we discuss this?
Yes, Prabhu did second.
All right. Any more discussion? Hearing none. David,
Aye.
Dustin,
Aye.
Linda,
Aye.
Prabhu,
Aye.
I vote aye. Motion carries. Let's see. I'm moving on to, whoops, just crossed the wrong thing out. Okay, as usual. Moving on to the two hearings, D and E. For 18 Carroll Road.
Yes, so this is the Abbey Road vision. This is both a definitive plan approval request and a major residential special permit. So there are two draft decisions. I apologize for getting those to you this morning or early the afternoon today, but I did get both of those drafts. There are a number of things that I think for discussion the board to go through on those decisions, but I'm happy to let the applicant go through kind of what they want to talk about, and then we can deliberate on the decisions needed.
You're gonna put me on the spot. I haven't actually been the one that's been working on this project. He's on vacation this week, Zach. So I took over the meeting for him. I've worked on this project back in 2011. So I do know, some of the back history of this project. but I'm not super familiar with the newest comments to this project. So, he did leave me with the draft comments, but I'm not super familiar with them to know them off the top of my head. I'm more than happy to try to answer them if you ask me, but I honestly don't know them all off the top of my head. I'm sorry about that.
Oh, Chris, what we
Discussion points that came up while I was drafting the decision. I think the applicant does appear that they would prefer the conventional subdivision plans. Those are the ones that are being revised.
Yes.
And were preferred with the previous approvals. The board would have to make a recommendation one way or the other, whether it's the flexible that they approve or the conventional. And then the other item of note would be the request for a waiver for the rules and regulations. So the previous conventional plan approval did, the board did find that a waiver for the connect properties would not be required. So there's, from the last meeting, you may remember that there is significant wetlands to the rear of the property,
Yes.
which essentially negates any meaningful extension of this road or connection to any other
Right. Yeah. There's a
properties.
big wetland in the background. So I do know about that. I think when I worked on this, it was a 40B. So it was kind of a different layout. But so I am aware of the wetland in the background and what they are suggesting now as a alternative to that. I have your comments. I literally have had like a day to go over them, so I haven't had much time to like really review them in depth. So if you have any like questions, I can try to answer them for you. I just don't know where exactly we are with this project in terms of where you guys are in your feelings in terms of this project.
There's one procedural matter that we should get out of the way.
Yes.
And that is that the board needs to recommend either the flex or the conventional plan. And
correct.
Following that, the applicant then needs to inform the board what plan the applicant is choosing. So the board could
I believe from what that they've given me is the definitive subdivision in North Grafton, Massachusetts plans. The plans they've given me do not say flex.
Right.
So
it's been pretty clear that the applicant intends to pursue the conventional plan. This is just like it's sort of a formality at this point.
Yeah.
And in order to get that particular formality out of the way, I will move that the board recommend the conventional plan.
Correct. Okay.
Wood seconds.
Okay. At the moment, I don't remember 40B there, but I seem to remember that
This was a long time ago. This was like way back in like 2010 that I worked on this. So that was a long time ago.
I think somewhere along the way, we looked at the previous plan on this property and looked at the same question about access to the land to the rear and all of these questions.
Right, right, yep,
I'm trying to remember is what we recommended that time.
yes,
So-
yes.
So from the previous, the 2010 major residential special permit and associated preliminary plan approval, or sorry, definitive plan approval, the board's recommendation essentially was that the access at that time was similarly found to be not meaningful in any way, and recommended that that the condition be satisfied.
Right.
But we do,
but
we do need another waiver request for that to be included, so.
Right, right.
But
Point of order, the motion on the floor is that the board recommends that this is the choice of flex or conventional that the board.
And that's what I'm asking about. What did we do the last time about this choice?
Is the commission in favor of a flexible subdivision at this point?
So the Conservation Commission on the previous decision was in favor of a flex approval.
Okay, okay.
The board did vote for the conventional on the previous approval.
Okay.
Okay,
And that's our motion this time also.
Yeah.
all right.
That is the
For
motion.
for a conventional. You're voting for, you would prefer conventional? Okay.
You understand,
it's
you understand that no matter what we vote, it doesn't change anything.
Right, right. No, I'm just trying to like kind of play catch up. You know.
Well, I'm trying to help you.
Thank you.
Vote, and then we have to know, well, Chris will make sure that we're okay on that.
Yeah, so similarly to the previous one, the board recommended the conventional, and then at the subsequent hearing, the applicant provided a written determination that they were pursuing the conventional. So this would follow the same as the previous.
Okay, okay. So they're, all right, okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
The reason I asked is because I was hoping we could be consistent with what we did before.
Yes, and my coworker, he's on vacation this week. That's why I am stepping in for him at this meeting, and which is why I don't know all the details of what has transpired.
We understand. We understand.
So,
is there any discussion on this motion? If not, David.
Aye.
Justin.
Aye.
Linda.
Aye.
Aye.
I vote aye. Recommends convention.
excellent.
What does the applicant want to? What has the applicant decided?
I think the applicant has decided to go with conventional,
Okay.
so that will work with what they want to do.
Yeah. Okay. And Chris, if necessary, you can put a condition in there that we get a written. Because the bylaw says, I think the bylaw says written. So just
We're
Yes.
supposed to receive it in writing before the close of the public hearing.
before the
Correct. Yeah, so the procedurally, the best way to do it would be to have the written decision submitted to the planning board before the close of the public hearing to pursue the conventional. So that's for the, so procedurally, the cleanest way to proceed would be to, we can still discuss the draft decision as done tonight, but I would recommend continuing both the public hearing and the decision deliberation to the next meeting, and then wrapping up at that time if the board is satisfied.
Okay.
The applicant's okay with that.
The applicant is okay with that. Yes.
Are we able to vote on the waiver if we so choose tonight?
So the waiver has not been submitted, but if the board, obviously we understand that that requirement is needed, so.
Yeah, if we're going to continue anyway, why don't we do it that way?
That makes sense, Bob.
Oh, is there any discussion on the draft decision?
I had a question. There are two draft decisions, right? One of them, there is a very clear call out in terms of waiver. The other one, the other draft decision says no request for waiver. Is there any difference between these two?
So I kept it similar to the previous approval. So there are two decisions associated with 18 Carroll. So we have the major residential special permit, as well as the definitive plan approval. And to remain consistent with the previous approval, the major residential, both decisions essentially point at each other or reference each other. The major residential special permit notes that the waiver is required, but remains silent on it, referencing the definitive plan approval, and the definitive plan approval then makes the official recommendation of either voting to approve or deny the waiver.
Okay.
And that is not inconsistent with past practice, right? And just with the structure of things, the major residential special permit is sort of a prerequisite to the definitive plan approval. And it has happened in the past that some waivers have been, the processing of a waiver, the deliberation of a waiver has been deferred to the definitive plan approval, which is where it counts.
Yeah, I think what Prabhu got confused about, and that was kind of my confusion as well in this discussion, is that in the definitive plan approval draft, finding 5 says the applicant requested a waiver for the following section. And that's why I was.
Is that, again, I haven't worked on this in a long time. Is that in the most recent submission that they are requesting that?
So the
I don't want to say something that I don't, that
So
they're
the-
not wanting.
So the waiver.
I'm doing my best to try to cover for Zach, who can't be here tonight.
So the waiver request was not included in the application packet at the 2010, the previous approval. Similarly, it was noted that the waiver was needed. The applicant submitted that and it was approved. So that's historically it has been approved. We do need to include that in this. The board, if they felt, could act on the major residential special permit tonight and then the definitive at a later time. But again, just to include everything in the record, I think the cleanest is to continue both and handle them with the full record.
Okay.
So just for a point of clarity, Chris, the major residential permit, we've already kind of said we'll keep that open in order to receive the applicant's statement of which plan they're going to pursue.
Yes, and I'm hoping that the applicant will make that request so that we can continue the hearing.
And so right now I see that there's two things that we need from the applicant. One is the written statement that they will be pursuing the conventional plan that goes under the MRSP, and then the waiver request, which goes under the definitive plan. So those two pieces of information that we would be holding both hearings open in order to receive, and we can discuss anything else that we want to discuss tonight regarding the draft decision. But we will plan to vote on the draft decision next meeting after closing the public hearings, unless something comes up, and we will include voting on the draft decision in the agenda. Right?
If I also heard correctly, the conventional plan is to be updated as well. Would we want that on our formal record as well, I believe?
The conventional plan would be updated. I thought
I heard that earlier tonight if I did not hear that correctly, I apologize.
No, I don't believe that they plan on changing the plans as they stand at the moment.
Okay.
From what I understand.
We did get a revised The revised definitive subdivision plan came in a week ago. I don't know if there is any other plan revisions that we're expecting.
No, I
Um,
believe that plan revision, Graves had very few comments. Obviously, these plans have been through the ringer a number of times, so they're pretty well done in terms of review at this point. So I think it was just the bearings that were needed to be adjusted, and I believe the revised plans did make that modification.
Thank you.
So applicant has requested that we continue the hearing till our next meeting.
Yes, please.
Yes. If there's nothing more that we have to do, we could have a motion on that request.
Dave will move that the board grant the applicant's written request to continue these two hearings, the MRSP and the definitive plan, to our next meeting, which is
August 24th.
August 24th sounds good.
At 7:30.
With my brain, yes, August 24th at 7:30 p.m.
Second.
It's the day before. It's the day before my mother's birthday. I won't forget.
Good luck. Discussion on the motion.
I had one question before we close out. The
Yes, sir.
decision that we'll be making, sorry, Mr. Chair. So the question is, in terms of waiver, is this the waiver pertaining to the length of the dead-end street?
This would be a waiver for
I'm not-
connection
yeah, I'm sorry.
easement.
Yeah, so typically with dead-end roads, the subdivision rules and regulations require that an easement be laid out so that if there were opportunity to connect in the future to the property behind, the town-owned property behind the parcel, that easement would already be laid out. In this case, because of the significant wetlands on the site, it's not impossible, but very improbable that would be the way to connect to that parcel. And so that was the recommendation in the past to just consider it satisfied.
Okay.
I'm trying to remember. We did grant that waiver last time around.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Is there any? Let's see. This is a motion to grant the request to continue. Is there any?
My only further discussion to say out loud is that we will need this in writing from the applicant in an email to Chris, probably.
We can send that to you tomorrow morning.
No problem.
You and Chris can sort out those.
Yep. No problem.
All right. If there's no further discussion, David.
Aye.
Justin.
Aye.
Linda.
Aye.
Prabhu.
Aye.
I vote aye. Motion carries. Continued until our next meeting. Excuse me. Okay, that moves us on to item F, which is 274 Providence Road. And I see we have a request from, by email from engineer, Garrier and Hallen.
Meeting for Graves.
Yeah, I think Graves came in today, and I guess they need to have some time with it or what have you. We respectfully request a continuance of the 274 Providence Street, SP 2020-4/SPA, Providence Village, project to the next planning board meeting on August 24th. We awaiting Graves' review letter. This will be the last continuation we will need, hopefully.
So move that we approve.
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. David.
Aye.
Dustin.
Aye.
Right.
Aye.
And I vote aye. Motion carries. We continued until 7:30 on the 24th. Okay. Now, that brings us to the two hearings on Snow Road, lots 2 and 3. Special permit 2020-6 and site plan approval on lot 2, and special permit 2020-01 at 80 Snow Road, lot 3. Reopening that hearing.
Yep, so I know the applicant is here. I would just ask, I know we've been hearing them together, but I would defer to the applicant if they would like to continue that way.
Chris, that raises a good point. I would actually like to consider them separately because there are issues with questions with one which are not applicable, do not apply to the other, and I'd rather not muddy the discussion.
Okay, then we'll just focus on lot 2 first.
Sure. Mr. Chairman, I'm James Tatro from Thompson Liston Associates, representing 163 LLC, who's the applicant for a special permit and site plan approval on lot 2. We have from back on July 27th a letter from Graves Engineering, which I'll call it a clean letter, and I will explain 2 items. One was that there was an item where Jeff Walsh had subsequently emailed and admitted he missed something on the plans, that we did correctly show all of the structures within 200 feet of the property. And the other is that item 14, excuse me, of Jeff Walsh's letter suggested that the board should consider a condition which would say that the work to improve site distance should be done at the beginning of the construction phase, so that construction vehicles do not have difficulties with this, and that also we, to paraphrase, that we should do a confirmation of the available site distance at that time and submit that to the town. And we would have no objection to either such condition. I just want to also, in regard to lot 2, mention that Natalia forwarded to me a message that came in from the folks at the Grafton Upton Railroad, and they had a couple of points in their letter, and I just want to respond to those points. One was that the representative of the railroad expressed a concern in regard to drainage, and I just want to say that in regard to drainage, we're actually very much decreasing the flow to the railroad property. And that is because, excuse me, the infiltration structure, which is actually on the next lot, on lot 3, is so much squelching the flow that is only letting out runoff to the railroad from that drainage structure, starting in the 25-year storm, which is a 6-inch or bigger storm. So we're actually, and this is in the drainage report, which again was reviewed by Graves, we're significantly reducing the flow to the railroad. He had 2 other points which were related. One is that the representative of the railroad suggested that there should be a construction fence during the construction phase to separate off work from the railroad property. We wouldn't have a particular objection to it, but I would just point out that on sheet ESC4 of the site plans, we showed proposed erosion control barrier at the limit of work toward the railroad property anyway. So we're already proposing a barrier between all of the work on both lots and the railroad property. And he suggested again in that email that he would like to see a fence of some kind at the limit of the applicant's property above the railroad property, and we wouldn't have a particular objection to such a condition of that either. Putting a split rail fence just as a nice visual marker of where applicant property and the railroad property are divided would be fine. So I would try to take any questions in regard to Lot 2. I think we've reasonably addressed the site distance issue, and we have no objection to the good suggestion that Jeff Walsh made that that work should be done right away so that construction vehicles aren't faced with an issue, with a problem, and that we should confirm it to the satisfaction of the board. We have no problem with that.
Remind me how tall the building is going to be.
Which building mask? The on Lot 2?
Talking about Lot 2, aren't we?
Sure. That's going to be a standard height. It's going to be 2.5 stories.
I saw a comment on one of these projects that spoke of 35 feet. That sounds like more than 2.5 stories to me.
So I believe the comment in regards to 35 feet, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I believe that was in terms of fencing. So the essentially the zoning in that location allows a maximum of 35 feet. So so that I believe that's where that measurement came from.
Okay.
And now I do have a question as relating to your comments on the Grafton-Upton Railroad letter. When you say you're reducing the runoff to the Grafton-Upton Railroad property, is that the runoff prior to any of the clear cutting that has happened on this property so far? Or is that as of existing conditions?
Sure. Justin, that's a comparison between the pre-existing conditions, not at this moment where some clearing has been done, and the post-development condition, which would be with these structures built and driveways, et cetera.
All right. Let's see there. I see a Q&A question. Is there a representative here from the Grafton-Upton Railroad?
There is not on this call right now, from my understanding.
And Greg also says the building plan has the structure just under 35 feet. Is that correct?
I can look. I don't believe there was a elevation provided.
I think Chris is correct. I don't believe we submitted an elevation view. I think we may have submitted the floor plan. We are aware of the limit under the zoning, and that will be adhered to. We will not be requesting a variance for height.
Well, we're not worried about, right now, I'm not worried about a variance. I'm worried about whether it's 35 feet. I think the point being that would be rather out of character with the heights of the surrounding homes.
Greg put there's a rendering of a building. I'm not sure which exhibit he's talking about. The closest I can come up with is exhibit 6 on this plan, on this document, for elevation view of a similar duplex. But I'm not sure that's what he was discussing. Mr. Chair, he is requesting to be enabled to speak.
Yeah. Chris?
Yeah, so the elevations in Exhibit 6 do show a similar duplex at 33 feet and 8 inches. If we want to move into the public comment section, I can give Greg the ability to speak. It's up to you.
Yeah, okay, because this is, yeah, that sketch is showing, it looks like 3 full floors plus a peaked roof, and it says 33 feet 8 inches. Yeah, go ahead and let him speak.
Okay, 1 second.
Good evening. Can folks hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks. Hey, yeah. Couple things. Let's do it in reverse order. On the elevation, you guys do have the plans up. That's where I was taking my cue. That certainly is approaching the 35-foot limit. I think the other concern, and Bob, I think you were kind of heading in that direction, is that at that height, it is atypical for the area, especially if it's going to sit atop ground that's already been moved and elevated before it's even built. So based on the work that, by the way, began last June, clearing this lot, and we're talking about it here in August, that a great deal of earth and land has been moved to actually raise where that structure is going to be. So not only is it going to be approaching 35 feet, it's also sitting atop a raised platform right now as well.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, as the plans show on the grading plans, the natural grade before any of this, any earth was deposited on site in that location was elevation of approximately 338. We proposed a top of concrete elevation of 339. So this is not proposed to be sitting on top of any material that has been deposited on site.
Okay.
So all I can say is that I look directly into that lot that's behind my house. It has changed, okay? Just in order for the trucks to drive in and to be able to move earth around, and the earth that they have pulled directly behind my house, it has actually changed. It is higher than it was before it was last June. So I don't know what the end result is, with, you know, in due respect to what may happen going forward and what the plans are going to be. But I can definitively tell you, and anybody that's come out from the board that's seen that backyard sees the piles of new dirt and rubble and rocks that are there in that opening. So that has definitely changed. That was not at that level before. I don't know if that's the end intent, but that's what it is right now.
As long as they're within the height limitation of the zoning bylaw, that is probably we can't say very much about that, but the reason I'm interested in is that there is this question of one of the criteria that we have to vote on is whether the project is compatible with other properties in the district and in the area. And that's where I think this question would surface. And
I would just note, Mr. Chairman, that this property is actually also relative to, I believe, all of its abutters, lower. And yes, there has been material trucked onto site, but this property was and is lower than all of its abutters. That actually, to some degree, mitigates a height being somewhat higher than other surrounding houses.
Okay.
Well, by way of scale, I live in a 2-floor colonial, and this structure will be taller than my house. So just by way of example, and you know, I think that has been the line of question all along. You have 2 streets worth of residents, all of Granny Drive and all of Tracy Ann, minus maybe 1 or 2 residents that have actually formally said, They do not believe that this fits the topography of the homes in this area. So that's public record. You guys have seen the petition, you've seen the discussions. So we have to take some care in terms of how quickly that gets dismissed. And I do think
if I could, you said that this does not fit the topography of the area. Was that what you said?
Yeah, so let me, instead of using the word topography, it does not fit. Bob, I don't know what your words, it does not fit the norm of the households in the neighborhood. In fact, that's one of the key issues about this entire development and the amount of disruption it is causing with duplexes, homes and lots that are not common to this area.
So if I may speak to that too, it's James Benincasa. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes.
Yes.
So all the houses in the area are colonials, 2-floor colonials. That's basically what we are proposing. And, if it was a single family home there, that if we don't get approved for a duplex and we build a single family home, it's going to be the exact same height as what we're doing on this. We're conforming to the bylaws, and conforming to the zoning. So one way or the other, it's going to be a house that's going to be comparable in height to all the homes in the neighborhood. I mean, Greg said himself, he lives on a two-story colonial. That's basically what we're proposing.
Well, your drawing to me is a 3-story.
It's a garage under. That's like a split, more of a split entry style. But roof height is exactly the same. That's what, if you have a split entry and it comes in and goes up, you come into the front door. That's why the front door is raised and it goes up. But the height would maintain the same thing. We wouldn't be any difference in height, whether it's this plan or another plan or a single family home, where the homes are all going to be the same height, roughly within a foot or so, but they'll all be under the 35, feet, which is, what's in the zoning.
Okay, well, we'll see where that comes when we get to the voting on the
thank you
decisions. Is there more to discuss about this?
I would just say relative to the Grafton Upton Railroad comments, reading John's comments, the general manager from that organization, his comments were strong. I would characterize them as strong, a strong concern. Probably even worded that way in many instances. How do we effectively navigate, connect, manage their representation and their concerns relative to plans, adjustments to plans, et cetera, going forward?
If I may, there were essentially 3 comments in that email. As I said, the first one dealt with the drainage. The drainage has been reviewed by Graves. And as I said, we're actually significantly decreasing the flow of runoff to the railroad property. The other 2 comments essentially were in regard to fencing, asking for construction phase fencing, which we'd be willing to do, but we already are proposing an erosion control barrier at the limit of work toward that property, and a post-construction phase fencing, which, as I say, would be willing to install. I don't know why those are the actual comments. Calling them strong or not strong or whatever is just vague. The actual comments were those things.
That's fine. How do we get the Grafton Railroad comfortable, especially with the drainage, since that seems the most major of all the concerns?
If they had asked, I would have sent them the report and explained it.
So just to clarify, I did, after receiving the comments from the Grafton Upton Railroad, I did call that contact and discussed with them. I won't represent that I, represent their interests in any way, shape, or form from a legal standpoint, but I did reach out to them to make sure that I had an understanding of their comments and what they were looking for. So.
Yeah. Seems to me that if Graves didn't raise a concern then I think this comes down to between the developer and the railroad, which the railroad spoke to, I think, in their comment. And that's, there it is.
I do have a question that might be more for Chris, but it's relating to the mentioning about the site distance and evaluating it to the board's satisfaction after the start of work. Is that something that we can do to the point that if we approve it with some sort of condition, then they come back to us with a revised, with the new sight lines of the site distances and everything. And then what would happen if we find that not to our satisfaction? That's kind of what I'm getting at there. Is there something, how would that work?
Yeah, so presumably the condition as kind of expressed by Graves would be that at the beginning of the construction phase, those sight lines would be some of the first work to be completed. Once that is done, the applicant presumably would, either through site photos or additional plans. I would probably include that there would be a site visit with staff. So I would go out to the site and get boots on the ground kind of view of that work being completed. That would be presented to the board for their review. And as a condition of the approval, they would have to complete that work to the board's satisfaction prior to moving on with the remainder of the work, whether it's, we could tie it to a building permit for the actual foundation of the structure or something similar to that effect.
Yeah,
and on behalf of the applicant, I'd say we are amenable to such a condition. That's fair.
Yeah, my overall concern I was kind of getting to there is like I discussed, last week, I'm less certain that, even looking at the drawing, engineering drawings that I've seen, less certain that is actually going to be satisfactory at the end result conditions there, at least to my belief, to the end result conditions they're proposing. So if we are having a condition that says they need to do that, site distance kind of planning, first thing to our satisfaction, what is that, how does to our satisfaction look in this kind of case? Meaning, if I'm still not satisfied that the site distances are okay, and I don't think they're necessarily okay in the current drawing, just to articulate myself better, does that then mean that as long as they're matching what there is on the plan, then I'm essentially must vote yes that it satisfies the condition, or is there more, nuance there? That's kind of what I'm kind of getting at.
Well, if I may, Justin, there are AASHTO standards for you can pick a speed, and there's a chart of what the acceptable stopping site distance is for that speed. Yes. And we can show that, okay, there is 325 feet, and that is as an acceptable AASHTO standard of stopping site distance for travel of, I'll get it wrong, 39 miles per hour, whatever the particular number is. But we can show that there is a specific standard of there's so much site distance, and that is considered adequate for a certain speed of travel. It's not all sort of subjective.
I understand that. My subjection, so to speak, is, like I said, existing conditions and trying to extrapolate from that. And then if I don't, if your measurement says, hey, you can see, up to this point, and I don't see that in what is presented to the board, that's kind of where, I was coming from in that discussion I was having with Chris, but I know it's not a complete subjective piece on this. It's more.
Yeah, I think my recommendation is, by sticking to AASHTO standards, and we can set a threshold that the board is satisfied, but that gives them a clear number to work towards. I think, although, it's probably good to have some flexibility for enforcement, I think as much as we can to really define that, it helps to create a clear standard for both the board to be held to and the applicant. So
If they can show that they've met the AASHTO standards, it's going to be a real challenge to argue with that and say, no, you've got to do more. You'd have to have a pretty strong case to make that in this particular situation, the AASHTO standards don't work. And I won't say it's impossible to make such a case, but if the AASHTO standards are met, it's a very high bar to disagree with that.
Right, but our rules don't say it's okay if they meet AASHTO, as Dave is pretty much saying.
I'm just saying that
very difficult for us to
if you challenge
something beyond that.
It's hard to make the case for going beyond AASHTO standards. Not impossible, but it's hard to make a case.
Yeah, well, I've had concerns about other projects in years past, whether stopping distance was adequate or something of that sort. I think my concerns went beyond the things that AASHTO measured or spoke to. I'm not sure that any of those has ended up as a decision, an important point in a decision, but I've certainly looked at it over the years and considered it.
Well, Mr. Chairman, as Chris suggested, having at least at some point a meeting on site with staff, we could both look at and confirm the specific standard for the specific distance available, and if there are any other parameters or considerations that staff thinks should be taken into account. Well, this is enough, but gee, this tree here looks like it could get in the way in certain conditions. Maybe you should take care of this or something to that effect. We're willing to work with the board on that.
Mm-hmm. And Chris would have to figure out how to put that in his conditions.
Yeah.
More discussion.
A little challenging for Chris.
Well, Chris needs a couple of challenges. Life is too easy right now, right? Said nobody.
My only further discussion. Go ahead, Dave. I'm sorry.
Chris, am I still enabled?
I missed something.
So that was Greg, Mr. Chairman, if you want to recognize him again.
Yeah, so I just want to say for the record, as I've shared with the board on multiple occasions and for the benefit of the developer and his representation as well, I do not oppose building in this area at all. I do not oppose a single family home that fits with the rest of the community in this area. What I do oppose, and I'll be perfectly frank about it, and I've been open about it, is I oppose duplexes on these lots. I do not think it is within the norm of these neighborhoods. That can be debated, but people have come out and seen what's around. And I also oppose building structures that of size, as we discussed earlier, that don't fit. But for the record, a single family home on a single lot, I've always been in favor of that. That's what was there before. That was torn down. I always expected it would be constructed again, and I think everybody has the right to do that. I never imagined the level of complexity around these two lots and the level of conversation and disruption, but that's where we are.
Yep. Well, it seems that the bylaw in your particular zone does allow for the possibility of two-family, but it does it under the umbrella of a special permit, where we look at the specifics of a particular situation to see if in this particular situation, it's acceptable. And as I say, we'll may well get to that when we get to voting on the decision.
I'm going to suggest that if there is no new information to be provided to the board, if there's no new information that we are expecting, that it might be appropriate to close the public hearing.
I'll say that the applicant for these two properties has not finished conservation review, and it is still in their open hearing process.
Yeah.
The next meeting is August 18th.
That doesn't stop us from closing our hearing and proceeding. Of course, they might. A lot of developers seem to find it best to get whatever conservation wants, so that they don't have to come back and have a new application with us.
If we expect that some changes might come out of the Conservation Commission process, then our usual practice is, and it would be appropriate here to keep the hearing open just in case conservation ends up requiring some changes that then affect our review.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I understand that it is the usual pattern to wait for the Conservation Commission to rule. In this case, the Graves Engineering Review was actually on behalf of both the Planning Board and the Conservation Commission, and included several items which were very specifically just Conservation Commission items. For instance, looking at the stormwater report checklist. I guess we don't expect additional information to be required on the Conservation Commission side. I would just add that there aren't any wetlands or buffer zones that are being worked in this particular case. It is simply for a land clearing permit.
Yeah. Well,
let me make us offer up a possibility here, as we found ourselves doing frequently in recent months. So far as we know right now, it seems unlikely that there will be additional information, which means that based on the information that's already on the record, staff can begin drafting a decision on this. Now, if we were to close the public hearing tonight, a draft decision would be acted on no earlier than the next meeting, August 24th. If we were to leave the hearing open just on the off chance that something does come out of conservation, we still could have staff begin drafting a decision. And as with the two earlier projects that we reviewed this evening, we could be leaving the hearing open, having a draft decision prepared so that on the 24th, we would be able to close the hearing and immediately upon closing the hearing, deliberate and finalize the draft decision. So either way, a decision cannot be issued by this board before the 24th. And in the interest of making sure that the record remains open just in case, it might be reasonable to continue this hearing one more time while staff proceeds to get to work on the decision, so that this board could be in a position to vote on a decision in 2 weeks.
Mr. Robbins makes a very good point. I had not appreciated that. I guess given the unassailable logic he presents, I would be foolish not to ask for a continuance on the special permit and site plan approval applications for Lot 2.
I don't think I've got the word my logic referred to as unassailable before, but I'll take it.
Until our next meeting on the 24th.
Okay.
And you're making that request?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I ask that you please continue the hearing on Lot 2 for both site plan approval and special permit to your meeting on the 24th, and I will send you a email specifically requesting that. I'll send it to Chris tomorrow morning.
Good. Okay.
During that, I will move that the board grant the applicant's written request to be received to continue this hearing to August 24th at 7:30 p.m.
Second.
Wood seconds.
Linda got it first. Have a shorter communication path to her. Okay. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. David?
Aye.
Justin?
Aye.
Linda?
Aye.
Prabo?
Aye.
I vote aye. This is as requested. Now we can move into lot 3.
Sure. And Mr. Chairman, again, James Tatro representing, in this case, CIL Realty of Massachusetts, the applicant on lot 3. Excuse me. In this case, the same, most of the same issues are there, with the exception that the proposed use of lot 3 has a Dover Amendment exemption, which Town Council opined does not require, therefore, the filing of a special permit application for lot 3. So we did not do so. We filed an application for site plan approval. The same, in fact, lot 3 has more boundary in common with the railroad. The same question arises that the concerns that the railroad representative enumerated of wanting to be sure about drainage, looking for a construction phase fence, and looking for a post-construction fencing, I think are applicable. Again, we will be sending less runoff to the railroad property, significantly less in the smaller storms than is going there now. I perfectly understand him asking the question. In regard to the fencing, again, if you want a construction phase fence, we're willing to do that. But again, also we're proposing at the limit of work between work on lot 3 and the railroad property, an erosion control barrier consisting of silt fence backed by stake hay bales during the construction process. And we are amenable to a condition asking for the installation of, say, a split rail fence at the boundary of the property, so it separates quite openly and visually lot 3 from the railroad property in the future. Also, Mr. Chairman, you and perhaps other members asked for some more information in regard to the use of lot 3 and some confirmation that the proposed use would not somehow be changed in the future, or that a granting of site plan approval to a use which at this time does not require a special permit, that it could be easily changed to a use that would require a special permit, a duplex of some other fashion. And I believe that the folks at CIL Realty supplied a sample of their 30-year lease on the property, which goes to the folks actually using it and occupying the house and doing the work with the clients, the Mass Brain Injury Association clients. And I think they provided another document also, which was a sample of restrictions, which actually was sort of from another development, which was also, I think, a affordable development. But just wanted to emphasize that there is a standard process in place already for these things, where again there's a 30-year lease and there are restrictions. And even looking at such a point 30 years out, if any person wished to change the use of this property, they would have to file with the planning board to ask for a special permit. If they wanted to maintain this as a duplex and 30 years out and sell to two residential customers, they would have to ask for a special permit to make that change. They wouldn't simply be able to just go ahead and do so. There'd be a zoning violation. So I'll try and answer any questions you have, but again, there is a whole structure and template for how this goes, and that does restrict ownership and how this is done.
Yeah, this helps. I still feel a little uneasy because this talks about assuming that the organization continues and is still there in 30 years and is prepared to and does accept the property, and then they continue with their use beyond that under this provision. What happens if they go out of business, they just disappear before the 30 years is up? Is that base fully covered with this?
Well, I go ahead. Go ahead. I think Jim Benincasa wishes to speak. Go ahead.
Sorry, I thought that was Chris. I think Chris was going to say something. Not me. Sorry.
Oh.
Sorry.
Yeah, I'm happy to speak to it, or if James, if you wanted to chime in first, but either way.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, so I do think that base is covered. So I did talk with town council. I know the deed was, we did request the deed be provided. I'm not sure if I have seen that document yet. I know town council did request it. But I do think that especially if that's provided, I think that base is covered by the deed restriction. I concur with James' kind of representation of how, regardless of within the 30 years or not, I think that process would still need to happen. So if, if a new kind of use was going to be proposed at that site, it would require the additional approvals. If it's separate from the currently proposed use. And I think maybe part of the issue is it starts to get a little bit beyond the scope of the board, because that is part of the Dover question in a way. So I think it's important to have it answered if we can, but I would recommend I have a hard time recommending the board make any decision one way or the other in terms of that concern. It's a bit tenuous in my professional opinion.
But one other possibility, if the town changes the zoning on that property between now and when this situation comes to pass, is this property grandfathered for two-family with a special permit?
So it would only, so the request is only for the site plan approval. So it would be grandfathered in terms of the site plan approval. In terms of special permit, it would be able to operate as approved, but it would not. So it'd still be covered under the Dover amendment, but similarly, if the zoning was changed and then a new use was proposed, the grandfathering would not transfer as simply a duplex use. They wouldn't gain a special permit by the zoning being changed, if that makes.
Let's say that the town decided you didn't need a special permit in this zone. What would be the applicable rule then?
Oh, in that case, it would be presumably the site plan would stand, and then since the use is allowed by right, they would simply be able to proceed as is, and they wouldn't require a special permit.
And if the town decided that you can't have duplex in that zone at all, what would happen?
In that case, presumably it would require a variance.
A variance? How? I don't understand the variance since we don't have.
Sorry, it would fall under the, I should clarify, not necessarily a variance, so it would fall under the pre-existing non-conforming restrictions of the zoning bylaw.
And it would be.
Yeah, I'd have to review those. I don't I don't have those memorized quite yet.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I've beaten it to death as much as I want. Greg has a question over here in Q&A. Do you want to read it, Chris?
Greg
yes,
still has audio if we want to let him read it himself.
No. Well,
I can be myself. I'm that most days. Thank you, Justin. Thank you, Chris. Yeah, so just a straightforward logistics question to CIL Realty. Who is the actual builder developer for this building? Is this also 163 LLC?
Yes.
Interesting.
okay. Do we have anything more?
I have a few thoughts that might be circling the bush more still, so to speak. But my first question kind of thought might be for Chris, might be for James, but it's relating to Exhibit 27 for this property, the question regarding Department of Public Health approval. Do we have any answer from that public comment in particular on what that situation is? I can elaborate more for watching, but basically the Elizabeth Levison was asking that her understanding is that Department of Public Health approval is required for the town granting any permits in relation to, public health, planned duplexes. And if the question is more, has it been approved, and or even is it necessary for this property?
So my understanding on this, again, this kind of falls under the Dover question. If that approval is required, then it's required. It's separate from the purview of the board as it's Department of Public Health. So prior to a building permit, that review would be presumably triggered. I don't know if the applicant wants to speak to that, if they have additional information in regards to that, but it is a bit separate from the planning board process. So.
Okay. Anything else, Justin?
Yeah. My other comment is for lot 3 in particular, just wanted to say out loud that I am more in favor of a construction fencing to avoid any erosion of rocks to the Grafton Upton Railroad. That's just my opinion. I think that has a public safety impact since there's a lot more direct bordering from lot 3 than lot 2 for that. So I think there is a benefit for a better than hay bale kind of restriction between the two properties. I don't know how strongly other people on the board feel. I'm not even sure exactly how strongly I feel. I just think has a benefit. And that, like, my other kind of question is, which we may have already kind of beaten this horse to the end, but with regard to Dover, if this goes through, it's Dover, we don't need to worry about special to the special permit. But then if this ever reverts in use, be it 2 years, 10 years, 30 years, 40 years, back to its existing zoning, Dover will no longer apply, and it comes back to us for special permit and we deny it. Does that mean that we can have some sort of condition saying that planning board has to approve, or it reverts to prior, to best possible prior state of the site? Because the site plan is kind of conditioned on the duplex, but the duplex is not special permit needed. That's kind of how I am thinking about that question.
If I could take up the latter question, there's no reason that if let's imagine 30 years down the road, Mass Brain Injury Association says, we don't want this site for whatever reason. And they say, we want to sell this, this site to an owner. And if the planning board did not grant a special permit to have assuming the zoning is the same, the planning board does not grant a special permit to allow a duplex, they would still be allowed to have this structure as a single family home. You just then have a large home that you look at, what wall can we take out to make the infamous open floor plan, and that is your option. You don't have no one has to go to any extremes such as looking to tear anything down or anything else. And in regard to the construction fencing, as I say, we're not opposed. I just would note, we're already proposing staked silt fence backed by staked hay bales, which is really a pretty good solid barrier. But if it's the sentiment of the board to have construction fencing, then fine.
Okay,
I think that's it for me, Bob. Thank you.
that's it for you. There's a comment in Q&A from Richard Sullivan. Question. Want to read it or Chris?
So I'll read the question. So this is from Richard Sullivan. Essentially, the Dover Amendment allows a business into a residential zone. Yes. If the Brain Injury Association dissolves, what would stop this duplex from becoming a halfway house, drug rehab facility, etc.? So, Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'd like to answer that.
Yes.
That question has been kind of beaten to death here. So the Dover Amendment, to clarify, does not allow any particular use. What it does is it precludes the board from requiring the use to have a special permit. As was noted earlier in the meeting, if the Brain Injury Association dissolves or for any other reason discontinues that use, any future use of the site would be required to either meet the current standards of the zoning bylaw at that time, or would require additional approvals in order to operate.
Which, are you done? Which brings us to the question, does the Dover Amendment cover halfway houses, and does it cover drug rehab facilities?
I would want to review that with town council just to be sure. My initial impression is that it may, but I can't speak definitively to that.
But I'm not sure that changes what we can decide.
So again, if it's covered by the Dover Amendment, the board would have no purview one way or the other to make the town would not be able to require one way or the other if it's covered under Dover.
Yeah, no, the people who don't like it would have to challenge the Dover. In any of these, they have to challenge eligibility under Dover. I've read cases where that was done. I've read cases where the Dover connection was too tenuous and it wasn't allowed on a challenge. Not too common, but I have seen it because we've looked into it. I've looked into it for previous cases. And there's another question. I don't know. It seems there are still many questions here that require additional due diligence beyond the evening. I don't know what questions we have open.
And the only questions I personally am seeing, at least in my own head right now, is things that relate to Dover, which we can't use to our voting one way or the other in regards to the site plan approval. And I don't intend to use them in that way myself for clarity, but it's just a matter of a lot of things people want to know about the Dover Amendment and how it relates to this parcel and this property and our decision. But I don't think any of those pieces of knowledge affect how we are able to vote on this.
Right.
Mr. Chairman, I would note that the same logic that Mr. Robbins raised in regard to Lot 2 would apply here, because we have also applied to the Conservation Commission for land clearing permit on this lot as well. So I believe, at least schedule-wise, we are in the same position on this lot. So we are not I will end up asking to continue this hearing to your meeting on the 24th.
Okay. Let's see if there's anything else we want to touch on before you do that. Is there anything?
There is one more thing in the question and answer, Mr. Chair. It relates to Dover. I'm willing to read and address it from my thoughts if you are willing to hear it.
Mm-hmm. Let's go.
So Andrew B. in the chat says, does the Mass Brain Injury Association know about the actual decibel levels of the train horns and the fact that trains pass 2 times per day? It seems the Dover Amendment is being used to build a facility in an environment that doesn't fit with the population they are targeting. Just to articulate that, I share some of the similar concerns about the train horn, but I think that is, my belief here is that is something that the Mass Brain Injury Association is aware of the location, is aware of the plans, is aware of the train track that does cross. I don't think there's anything more that we can do on our end or require on our end regarding their, anything written or consent to say that they are aware, because the bottom line is if they move into here, they are accepting that. If they don't, then it doesn't qualify for Dover in the current understanding. So that's my feeling.
Mr. Woods is correct, and the applicant CIL Realty and Mass Brain Injury Association are aware of the context of this location and the railroad.
I thought about this today when I was looking through this. That might be the reason you end up with them looking to sell off the property. They may find it's a problem, but we covered all the bases about what ifs like that. So I don't think it's within our ability to do something one way or another. Basically, Dover says we can't have a discretionary approval process, a special permit. And we're talking about discretionary, I think we've pretty well beaten it up. Is there anything else before we move on? I don't see anything else. So,
Mr. Chairman, I would ask to please continue this hearing on a request for site plan approval for Lot 3 to your meeting on the 24th.
At 7:30.
I will move that the board grant the applicant's request for continuation to August 24th at 7:30 p.m. Linda will second it, right? Oh, Linda, why don't you make the motion and I'll second it?
Never mind.
No, we got to get credit in here.
Let's let the record show that Linda made the motion and I seconded it.
She just got reelected, so too bad I can't make the motion. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. David.
Aye.
Justin.
Aye.
Prabhu.
Aye.
Oh, you got moved up.
Whoops, Linda.
Aye.
Just stay on. Hey,
isn't it?
This is a test. Did I get Prabhu?
Yes.
He said yes.
Yes.
And I'll say yes. So,
He
listen.
pays no attention.
I thank you for your time, and we'll see you all on the 24th.
Okay, good luck.
Okay.
Moving on. Moving right along.
Hey, Bob, I have one question. I'm seeing all this. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, so all these questions and concerns regarding that seem to be going around the Dover Amendment conversation. Should we just direct this to the town council? I don't think the planning board has authority to weigh in on either ways about should we do this under Dover Amendment or not and stuff. Not to beat the dead horse any further. That is just an opinion.
I think that if board members want to ask questions, they need to be able to ask questions. I think we've asked probably enough questions for most of us, whether we like the answers or not. Now we have a question from Greg. Well, we have closed the hearing, but well, no, yes.
Still open, but continue.
What does the planning board do next to come to a decision on these two proposals? Evaluation of building types and sizes that fit in the neighborhood, etc. If individual members have concerns, they will do whatever they need to do. But there's nothing procedural relative to that. The board members have heard the concerns, and they will do as they see necessary.
So, Mr. Chairman, just to clarify, in speaking procedurally, the public hearing is still open, so the board can still receive new information if needed, and can still request new information if desired. And then there's also still, if the public hearing is closed, there's still the process of deliberating on the decision. And just for the benefit of the residents understanding that procedurally, no new information can be presented to the board. The board cannot consider new information once that public hearing is closed, but they can still go over what is provided in the exhibits, and they can have a discussion amongst themselves of all of that information, and then the board can make their decision either to grant the provisions of any draft decision or to deny. So hopefully that kind of clarifies procedurally.
It's kind of like when a case comes to a conclusion and it's turned over to a jury. It's now the juries, they can go over the same information and they can ask for clarification, but they can't intake more at that point once it's closed.
In terms of our deliberation and decision process as well, we haven't done this, but we have the ability to vote on individual pieces of a decision separately. So we can say this finding, we're going to vote on this one finding or this one, approval or waiver. So we have the ability to do that piecemeal as well.
Yeah. Okay. Hopefully we've covered that base. So I would like, if there's nothing, have anything on either 3A or 3B to do tonight.
Mr. Chair, I think we have an action item to complete.
Oh, you're right. You're right. Draft decision, scenic road permit, SRP 2020-01 at 21 Meadowbrook.
Yep. So, Mr. Chairman, you may recall this is the alteration to the scenic road permit for alteration of a stone wall. The board was considering the removal of a section about approximately 18 feet of a existing stone wall to provide driveway access to a proposed single-family house. One of the kind of conditions that the board, specifically in this case, was looking at is they wanted to make it clear that the stones that are to be removed be serving the public right of way, whether it's to remove the gated access and fill that in, or to provide, as the applicant had presented, 2 stone pillars on each side of the driveway. So I did add a finding that I think allows the applicant to proceed in either direction, and made clear that the board did not have a preference, and it's up to them how they would like to proceed in that regard. And so with that, the other kind of part that I had was this condition for previous similar appeals that the stones be moved by hand for port. I didn't know if the board had any kind of viewpoint on that one way or the other. I don't see how that's quite applicable in this instance, but I wanted to draw that to the board's attention that was included in previous, and they either may want to remove that condition or keep it included. But
I like keeping it included.
Chris, this is James Conkey, the applicant and owner here. I'm fine with that. I was planning on doing that anyway. I want to keep it all handwork, so I'm not scratching any of the stones that are going to be reused. So that's fine to have that in there.
Okay.
Has some work been done there recently?
No work has been done yet.
Somewhere along Meadowbrook, we just saw, when we drove by and we saw
Yeah, something.
some signs of, I'm not absolutely sure it was this one, but it was a driveway. In any case.
No driveway yet. I mowed the grass, but that was the extent of it.
This looked like digging in the driveway area, but I think our job here is to do something about the draft decision. Are there any questions or concerns about the draft decision?
For me, no questions or concerns. The only thing I will say for Chris's knowledge that for future drafts, this one is short enough that it doesn't really matter here, but I've liked the prior practice I've seen in some other decisions that explicitly show, like under findings, F1, F2, F3, rather than just 1, 2, 3. That helps in a skim, or if you're looking at multiple pages, to know that you're still in the findings and not a condition. Those kind of separations. I think this one's short enough that doesn't really matter, but for the longer ones, it can help.
Yeah.
And I particularly liked the way you wrote the finding too. That I thought was, very representative of our discussion.
So, are there any other comments or discussion to be had? If not,
I move that we approve this decision.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? If not, David.
Aye.
Justin.
Aye.
Linda.
Aye.
Prabhu.
Aye.
And I vote aye. Motion carries. Decision is approved. Now.
Thank you, everyone.
Good luck. Now, 3A and 3B, do we have anything to do tonight with it? Chris?
Sorry. So the Mill Redevelopment Overlay District and the subdivision rules and regulations update. Unfortunately, I have not had a chance to get to those in the past 2 weeks. I just did not have the capacity. We're kind of handling a lot of other items at the moment, but I will reach out and move on with those. So I do note that the subdivision rules and regulations, where we left off, Graves did present quite extensive notes for us to go through. So if the board, it would help if the board members could kind of go through that and give their impressions of those comments.
I don't believe I've seen any notes from Graves.
I have not either.
Okay, I will have those I may not have forwarded those, so I apologize. I'll have those included in the next round under the discussion items, and I'll have them forwarded to each of you as well.
You could forward them to us as soon as possible. I don't know about anybody else, but I'd like to be able to, to review those notes and do some thinking between now and the next meeting.
Yep, absolutely. I'll send those tomorrow morning first thing. So.
Okay, so we're okay on moving on to item 4. Okay, bills. I think there was
there is some bills.
Make a motion for the board to approve the bills and authorize the planner to sign on behalf of the board.
With seconds.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. David?
Aye.
Dustin?
Aye.
Linda?
Aye.
Prebo?
Aye.
I vote aye. Motion passed. Minutes of previous meeting.
The minutes we have July 27, 2020 for.
Are there any comments on
I'll
the minutes?
move that the board approve the minutes of July 27, 2020 as drafted, subject to any revisions that come up during the discussion of the motion.
Second.
Moved and seconded.
I
Is there
read
any
them over.
discussion?
Nothing stood out to me as needing correction.
Okay. No further discussion?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
Justin? Linda?
Aye.
Aye.
Prebo? I vote aye. Correspondence. Was there any correspondence anybody wanted to touch on?
You're really witty, aren't you?
Apparently not. All right. Do representatives of the planning board on town committees and CMRPC have anything? If not,
Mr. Chairman, sorry.
I was just calling out staff report as one of the items that we didn't.
Yeah, I'll kind of handle those together. So I did just want to, it's related to CMRPC and town committees. I just wanted to note again, the OSRP survey is still open until the end of August. The information for that is available on the town website. We're also distributing, if you have picked up, that we've included a flyer in there. So we're advertising in multiple kind of modes and areas. But I, is and more are coming in. So thank you to those who have taken the survey, and I hope that more will come in, and highly recommend it if people have the time and to do so. It's a thorough but brief survey. We try to split the difference in that. So I just wanted to add that plug. And then I don't think we need to deliberate too much, but similar to Justin's point of the formatting of the decisions, having gone through quite a few at this time, I do want to start to collate some real consistency between the decisions and the formatting of them. Some of them and the language can sometimes differ from decision to decision. So I will be working on that, and I'd like to at least have some kind of offline discussion with members if there's any preference that they have in regards to those kind of formatting and layout. I'd like to have that discussion, and I don't think we need to do it as a kind of procedural matter here, but I am going to work to tighten that all up. So I'm happy to have those discussions. So.
The board's decisions have taken a lot of different forms over the years. I've run across a few from like the 80s and 90s, and they look very different now. But yeah, I was looking at that a little bit before, just before you came on board, Chris. I was looking kind of looking through a few decisions, looking to see how many variations we had. And of course, there are a lot of different kinds of decisions, but there are some formatting aspects that can be more consistent.
Yeah, and there's some simple thing. I don't know if the board has a preference in terms of the heading on the decisions, that, you know, including the town seal and those kinds of features. Personally, I think it makes the document a little bit more official, but I don't know if the board has any preference in that regard. Some of those smaller things.
I think we're good with what seems right.
Yeah, my only preference is that we try to make sure that it's consistent, so we're not changing it completely every, you know, second week or something.
Right.
So I've been here through those, starting with the decisions from the 80s, or dealing with them, and starting with making decisions in the beginning of the 90s. They've evolved the way they have, partly because of different planners, but also because things happen and council tells us something and the decision gets bigger. And then something else happens down the road and the council at that time tells us something and the decision gets bigger.
Right.
That's where a lot of this has come from. We have backed off from where we were a few years ago about going through and breaking down the votes on each piece, each section of the decision, and we've streamlined that, I think, productively. So, anything else on any of that? Anything else on town committees and CMRPC? If not,
Adjourn?
is that a motion, Linda?
Yeah.
May I, before a second, may I just
Yes.
procedurally ask, I know in an email, Chris, you said you were going to reach out to Peter Crosser from the select board about the TA search committee stuff. I know that's not on our agenda for tonight, so it's not something we're doing tonight. I don't know if you heard back or know of any state there with regards to what we'd be doing.
Yeah. So originally, I was looking to reach out to ask that question. I had some further offline discussion and came to the conclusion that there probably wasn't as much of a rush as we initially anticipated. So I think tentatively we're going to put it on the agenda for this upcoming meeting. But I will still reach out to the select board to see if there is any direction in that instance. So it's on the next agenda tentatively, but it may fall off if they're looking at a longer timeline or we may move forward. So
yeah, I'm quite interested about that. Some of you know that I was on the last search committee, 10, 11 years ago. Still interested in it. I think that it's probably wisest to not make an appointment until we've been asked to make an appointment. And we have an outline of the particulars that may or may not apply to this case. My recollection, and I could be wrong, Dave might remember, for example, that the parameters for the search committee were changed after I did the Tim's search.
I think that's true. Yeah, as you, Bob, I'm certainly interested in that. Some of us have been around through the 10 years of all of the TAs that Grafton has had.
Yeah, and actually, I've been around for all.
Which I think brings a good perspective to the selection of a new TA.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's to be determined.
Yeah. Let's see. Oh, I know. The thing is, the selectmen are apparently talking about this very subject tomorrow night, and that's what I got. I touched base with Peter, and that's what I got. That they're talking about it tomorrow night. And we'll see what comes out of that. They may have a draft. I haven't looked to see. They may have a draft memo or something at this point. So let's see about that. Is there anything else?
I do just want to quickly note, it's really neither here nor there, but I will be off. I will be away with kind of very limited access to internet and phone from the 13th to the 18th. So that is a bit of an extended period of time, but obviously I'll work to make sure that staff is set up for success, and I don't anticipate any issues with that. But.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'll second Linda's motion that she already made.
Yeah.
I just had to stand.
Okay, that's not a debatable motion.
Now that Justin seconded, there is no discussion.
Well, you can't have discussion. It's a motion to adjourn. David.
Aye.
Justin.
Aye.
Linda.
Aye.
Raybo.
Aye.
I vote aye. I want someone to count how many unanimous decisions, votes we've had. Tonight it was every single one, and it's been pretty good record. Okay, we're done. We're out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.